The enigmatic netrunner Lucinia Kushinada, or Lucy for short, is Cyberpunk Edgerunner's second lead character and the gateway into the Edgerunner path for David Martinez. Carrying the weight of her own past, she quite literally shoots for the moon as she works as a merc in Night City. Now, a warning going forward. I'm not going to hold back spoilers at all in this video from this point on. So, if you've not seen the series, just letting you know, this is your fair warning. Now, with building Lucy in Cyberpunk Red, which is the newest version of the Cyberpunk tabletop game, I had some challenges. This build is being done with a process called the Complete Package build for character creation, which we're able to pretty much fully customize everything we want. This makes theme builds a dream when you're doing them in Cyberpunk Red, but about those problems. It's not how her skills or stats would pan out, but there's something I've gone over before with this, and I'm going to touch on a little bit now. In Cyberpunk Edgerunners, that time period is a good 30 years ahead of Cyberpunk Red's time frame, which is 2045. There are no quick hacks, and certain things are required to netrun in Cyberpunk Red. Due to these requirements, I had to have a bit of fun with making her gear and cyberware fit and also keep to her theme and concept. And I'll go more into detail on that when we get to cyberware and her netrunner gear. That's more towards the end. If you need timestamps or anything, these are the ones here. They're also listed down below, and everything should be segmented up, so if you want to hop ahead to certain parts, feel free, and the full build is at the end of the video. For Lucy, the main things I took note of when coming up with her concept were all based on how she operated on her own. While she does run with Main's crew, anytime she's been separated from them, she's had a certain way of doing things. She's not a brute force powerhouse, she's more reliant on keeping out of sight and, well, out of mind. She's what you call a picksocket, and keeps a low profile while she's doing her thieving, and also due to other problems like Arasaka. Whenever we see her fight during the show, most times it's usually when she can get the drop on her opponent. Either by shredding them with her monowire or even a sneaky quick hack, she's always kept out of sight. Being able though to shred through black ice as she does in the show is only really going to be able to be done by increasing your enroll ability. So there's not much I can do about that. But there is one thing though that she can do right out of the gate. She hunts and kills other netrunners, and she's good at it. So what I did in the end was come up with a concept of a stealthy, almost roguelike netrunner with a focus on anti-personnel netrunning and a reliance on her monowire over firearms while in combat. She's a specialist. She's been raised to be good at what she does, and starting off in Cyberpunk Red like that is difficult without full-on min-maxing. And I don't like min-maxing. These are theme builds after all for fun. Now, for how netrunning works in Cyberpunk Red, if I started going into the mechanics in this video, we'd be here for an hour. So I'm actually going to recommend you someone who knows a lot more about it than me. JonJonTheWise is another Cyberpunk YouTuber who I really can't recommend enough, and his video for netrunning is up above and also in the description. If you're coming into Cyberpunk Red and you're wanting to do netrunning or watching this video and have never done it before, go watch his rundown. I'm going to be direct about stuff from here on, so I don't want y'all too lost. He knows his stuff and has played Cyberpunk much longer than I have. Give his video a look, say hi to the guy, and well, you'll thank me later. Now, let's get going with this. And remember, as we go into this, I do have the build's data available in my Discord for Foundry, and I'll answer questions in the comments below. So, Lucy's someone who takes care of herself. While she has had some body sculpting done, she's a runner, and I'm not just talking about the net. And since the concept we're going with is a stealth-based build, I'm going to be sure that she gets lined up to be less about brute force. One thing though that I'm not going to leave hanging is her training from a child. She was raised by Arasaka to be a deep diver in the old net. So I'm going to be sure to give her quite a bit of attention in terms of intelligence and knowledge, at least in raw stats. First off, we're giving her an 8 in intelligence. The training from Arasaka, backed by experience from her childhood, needs to be represented here. She's not a fighter, she's a thinker. And she is one if not the most intelligent on Main's team. After that, we're going to put a 5 in reflexes. She's shown she's a good shot and that she can drive a vehicle without worry. It's nothing to write home about, so this is a good spot for her. Up next though is her dexterity, which we're putting a 7 into. She's built to be a hand-to-hand monowhip user in meat space, but dexterity also governs how well she can keep out of sight with stealth. She's made to ambush and position herself where she's going to be a difficult fight to get a hold of. Following that, we're giving her an 8 in technique. This lines up with her intelligence as well, and is put in as a tie for her highest for the same reasons. This represents her own aptitude on how things work, which is another foundation laid down more by her merc life. Up next, one of her lowest stats, her cool. If you want a reference on why she's only getting a 4 in this stat, just ask Rebecca. Cold, distant, and nerdy, she's an introverted person, and this will line up just right. There are many times in the show where communicating what she really means falls apart, and she distances herself from others often, so cool governs this kind of behavior. Yeah, it's a 4. After that, though, is willpower, which we'll be putting a 7 into. She withstood years of difficult training and then put into the hellscape that is the old net, dealing with AI that killed her friends one after another. The sheer amount of will it took to not only endure that but also escape it is unshakable. This stat was almost an 8 instead of technique, but after some thought, I decided to swap it up and give it the 7. Next up, though, is her other lowest stat, luck. Lucy relies on her own hard work and aptitude, rather than David, who just basically got by on luck. She's still able to have some clutch moments, but 4 seems to be a good spot for her without her needing, well, for lack of a better term, plot armor. She's going to be getting a 6 in her movement. All that running at night isn't for nothing, plus being able to get around quietly to an access point isn't going to be much help if you can't get there quick enough. Her body is going to be getting a solid 5, as while she's fit, she's also not really a bullet sponge if you catch my drift. She's not tanky. And finally, her empathy is going to be at a 6. She's not borged out or sporting major cyberware, she's not sporting any cyberpsychosis symptoms, and her clear caring about what's really going on around her shows she's also not numb to the suffering of her friends and who she loves. Now, moving on to skills. We will follow the format I prefer to use, which is the 2, 4, and 6 level layout. 2 represents just general knowledge, 4 represents experienced, and 6 represents an expert. The highest a skill level can go in character creation is 6 for the record. This is all just for how you start out in character creation, not further down the road. This also makes organizing this a whole lot easier, since Cyberpunk Red has so many skills to help you build exactly what you want. So this helps me keep it from getting out of hand. So, we're first going to go over what skills we putting 2 levels into. Those skills will be Endurance, Education, Local Expert, Conversation, Human Perception, Persuasion, Drive Land Vehicle, and First Aid. A basic spread of skills for 2s, and the Endurance represents her time being able to survive in the Badlands on her own. She's a survivor. I would have liked to put more levels into Education, but it didn't really help out with what I had to do later on down the road. You'll find out when we get to the 6th tier. And now moving on to what she's actually more experienced in, she's going to be getting 4 levels in Concentration, Perception, Athletics, Resist Torture and Drugs, Brawling, Handgun, Basic Tech, and Pickpocket. She's shown that she can focus under fire, she's able to withstand the pain of dealing with constant assaults from AI, she's got a decent shot, and well, she's a picksocket, and that's how she makes her casual eddies when she's on her own. Now though, to what she's most experienced with, and you're going to see why there's not that many level 2 skills this time around. The level 6 skills are going to be her Stealth, Library Search, Evasion, Melee Weapon, and Electronics and Security Tech. Yeah, that last one is a skill that costs 2 points per level, meaning to get it to level 6, it cost me 12 levels. But that, alongside Basic Tech and Interface, which is her role ability as a Netrunner, makes her someone who can crack into anything. Of course, she's stealthy, able to get out of the way of a punch, and she's also an expert monowire user. The one thing here that may stand out odd is Library Search, which goes alongside her ability to track down information and data. I view this as a necessity for runners as well, because not everything is going to be in a net architecture. Sometimes you really got to get out there and see what you can find in the data pool. And this, well, it's going to go a long way. Now that we're past her stats and skills, it's gear time. In this section, we're going to cover everything from weapons to cyberware, and the amount we get to do it with is 2,550 eddies. Normally, we cannot increase this amount for balance reasons, so we're going to stick exactly to that. We also get an additional 800 eddies at the end purely for fashion, which we don't get to keep any of if we don't spend it. This is single-handedly the hardest part when I was making Lucy, and I'll say why outright right here. A Netrunner's ability, Interface, requires the use of a cyberdeck. To use the cyberdeck, you must have an interface plug, and to have interface plugs, you must have a neural link. This is non-negotiable, and up front, this is a $1,500 eddy payout, if you want to take it as a Street Rat or Edgerunner build. Now, that means raw, we are left with only 1,050 eddies. But I'm stubborn, and I made it work. So first off, we're going to go over her straight-up normal gear. She's going to be sporting a heavy pistol, as she is using a Lexington during the fight with JK. the same gun that David used, actually. We're also going to be giving her 30 basic ammunition for it. That's a weird amount, I know, you'll see why. And outright remember, this is a backup weapon and should not be what you focus on using in a fight. Next, we'll armor up her clothing a little bit with some tried and true light armor jack. And then, we'll give her an agent, which is of course a must-have in this game. This totals out to being worth only 330 eddies, but you'll be able to survive your first gig. And yes, I know, I left out the cyber deck right now. We're going to get to that at the end. Next, we're going to be going over her cyberware. And first things first, you absolutely must have the Neural Link and Interface Plugs combo. So go ahead and put that down, you don't got a choice. Or you do, and you just can't use your roll ability. The Interface Plugs upgrade will also represent her deep dive port. And while there are currently no rules for deep diving and chair running, this is the closest possible cyberware to represent that. Next, we're giving Lucy 2 cyber eyes with virtuality paired into them. While this is more expensive than virtuality goggles, there is another notable Netrunner I may make who will be sporting the virtuality goggles. Plus, I'm keeping to theme here. Next comes her main weapon, the monowire. This is where the difference in time comes into play, as in Cyberpunk Red, there is no monowire that comes out of your interface plug. In Cyberpunk Red, you have the Slice and Dice, which is a monofilament whip that extends from your thumb tip. Works the exact same way, it's just in your thumb. And if you ever lose that hand, don't leave your hand behind. I'm not joking. I'm really not kidding. Make sure you get your hand. That ends up with a massive total of 1,900 eddies. Yep, 1,900. Now we're coming up to the fashion wear, which is the free 800 eddies that you can spend on clothing. We'll be giving Lucy some extra cyberwear with this, which is Chem Skin, Tech Hair, and EMP Threading. She'll also get 2 sets of clothing, which is a set of Urban Flash as her daily wear, and a set of leisure wear for her running. This ends up covering the entire 800 eddies. But from this point forward, we're about to get into the Netrunner gear side of things. Let's first talk, because I had to make a call to make sure that we could make Lucy as good as she could be at the start. Normally, you'll pick up a basic cyber deck, which is a solid 500 eddies and has 7 slots for programs and black ice. To make Lucy work, I went with a cyber deck that is listed as a poor quality one. The difference is, this cost only 100 eddies and has 5 slots instead. That's the only difference, 2 slots less to get an extra 400 eddies to spend. So this poor quality cyber deck has no other drawbacks than that, and from there, I set out to make her be able to tear apart other runners in the net, which in most games is not that common. But if you have a GM who knows what you're trying to pull off by using this Lucy build, I'm pretty sure they'll throw some fun your way. But I also kept in mind to make sure that she could function normally and be able to handle black ice just as good as the rest of them. First off, her attacking programs will be Sword, Banhammer, and Brisbolt. Banhammer and Sword can be alternated as attacks on black ice, them both being able to shred it, Sword being more effective, of course. And then you have Brisbolt, which is a straight anti-Netrunner program that reduces the target's net actions per turn if you hit them. Basically just keep them nerfed and be able to not do as much as you can. For defensive programs, you'll get both Shield and Flak. Shield can catch the first non-black ice program effect that can hit your brain for damage, and Flak can pretty much handle the rest. One thing to note here is indeed I am not using armor at all as a program. This is intentional. While she is a Netrunner of high skill, she repeatedly gets taken down in the show as well by unexpected hits. If you're feeling froggy, you can always swap Flak for armor, as they're the exact same cost. But the reason why I went with Flak and Shield is she's made to fight other Netrunners in combat, so that fit more appropriately than using armor. So in the end, the total for all these cyberdeck and programs come down to 320 eddies, which could have been 720 eddies if we wound up going with the base cyberdeck. That poor quality cyberdeck saved us the money to make this work a little bit better. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to use the cyber eyes. Now when I was making this setup, it hurt me to not put Hellbolt in rather than Brisbolt, but I did not want to have her sporting only a medium pistol, and David uses a Lexington too, and I made it be represented by a heavy pistol in the previous build. So, starting in this video, we're going to add a new section here, the Night Market Run. The Night Market Run is going to be about what I recommend picking up to make the character build come even closer to what her concept is about. So, Right off the bat, I want to recommend certain programs to really hammer home the anti-Netrunner design of her kit. Hellbolt. Hellbolt, Hellbolt, Hellbolt. This program not only hurts the brain, but causes the runner it's used on to burst into flames, including their clothing. Sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? If there was a way to fit this into the main build, I would have, but I wanted to keep the heavy pistol in. Next, Poison Flatline. This is a program that can destroy an enemy's Netrunner's programs in their cyber deck outright, one at a time, as long as they're not black ice. If you're feeling especially evil, there's Super Glue, which is a program that actually traps the enemy Netrunner in the net with you for a number of rounds that you roll. This can lead you to completely disabling their cyber deck when comboed with other programs, or just straight up melting their brains with no escape. Or, if you don't want to deal with them at all, there's the Deck Crash, which effectively is just the eject button on a target enemy. It kicks the other Netrunner you're against straight out of the net. And if you're using any black ice, they take all those effects in tandem. An early build of Lucy featured all of these programs, but after some testing, it was decided instead to make sure that she had more of a baseline kit, but tuned a little bit more to anti-personnel to keep in theme. On though to cyberdecks and upgrades for them, you really need to go to Artalsorian Games' website and snag Midnight with the Upload. It's a downloadable piece of content, a PDF, in their DLC section, and it has all kinds of new cyberdecks and upgrades, and I'm going to be referencing it here. And don't worry, it is free. Some cyberdecks to consider picking up are definitely the Kurama Advanced deck, which makes any time you jack out of the net a safe one. Initially, Lucy was actually using a Kurama entry deck, but I decided it was a little bit too limiting. So, snag its big brother for the same kind of vibe. The Microtech Scout, though, lines up well with Lucy's experience in net running, as with it, you're able to immediately use the Pathfinder action for free the moment you jack in and you can see the net architecture, if you roll well, of course. If your first gig was a big payout, though, consider the Raven Microcybe Phoenix. This thing is a premium cyber deck and is effectively its own backup drive, allowing any destroyed programs to be restored upon jacking out safely. As for upgrades, Swiftly Clean allows you to make 2 rolls for Cloak and take the highest roll each time, making it line up with Lucy being able to move through the net unnoticed much easier. There's also the tried and true backup drive, which saves your programs and, well, in the long run, saves you a ton of eddies instead of having to replace them. There's insulated wiring that keeps you from bursting on fire when under attack from effects that can cause it, like an enemy Hellbolt or some Hellhound Black Ice. And then there's the range upgrade, which lets you jack into the net at a further range. It's only 1 extra tile, but that extra tile can really mean a lot if you have nowhere to hide and hit the spot. For cyberware you should absolutely look into as well, since the initial cyberware purchases are limited, is first get the chipware socket. Get 2 if you can afford it. This is also something I wish I could have put in the initial build. Also, a pair of Chirons will line up well with Lucy's Cyber Eyes and make them being on par with what they should be, at least in 2077 terms. An internal agent and Cyber Audio Suite are definitely high up in the chain, and that internal agent can actually link up with your Chirons. After that, you can also pick up a homing tracer, which we actually see Lucy use in the show. It also comes with a free little button tracker, so don't worry, you ain't gotta buy too much more of those. After that, the rest are pretty much all up to you. A Midnight Lady, a cyber arm with a cyber deck installed in it, memory chips for backing up data you steal, or, if you want to have something fancy, a tactile boost chipware. We didn't see her use anything like that in the show, but for sneaking around without line of sight, it's a great piece of chipware. You basically put your hand to the wall, and anything within 20 yards of you, you can feel the movement of. It's just cool. You need the chip socket though for it, just a heads up. I won't be going over Black Ice purchases or anything like that. I'm gonna leave that up to player taste. But at least with these recommendations, you have an idea of what to keep an eye out for to really make Lucy be what she can be in Cyberpunk Red. So, there you have it. An anti-personnel stealth netrunner. She's not some lock-picking rogue that you may see from other games. She instead can just breach security manually to get to an access point and take control of an area. She's not your standard netrunner, which is designed to shred Black Ice. She's there as an assassin to other netrunners, able to hunt them down and beat them in their own playing field, in their own architecture. And when the fist comes flying, she's a melee fighter, but relies on the opponent not being focused on her or having their eyes elsewhere so she can take full advantage of the situation. Remember, since the Slice and Dice is a melee weapon, her attacks ignore half of their armor, so she can really shred people apart when she needs to. To be as good of a Netrunner though as she is in the show, I cannot recommend enough to you on getting your Netrunner rollability interface as high as you can in ranks as fast as you can. Getting another level in interface makes every single thing you do in the net stronger, so always keep that in mind. If you have any questions, ask away in the comments section below. Netrunning is a very complex role to take in Cyberpunk Red, and this is a theme build rather than going with what is the most optimal or strong. A runner built like Lucy is a specialist kind of Netrunner, and it can work well in a team that's actually doing 2 Netrunners. Feel free to tweak her build in any way you see that fits. And remember, each table is different, and few play the game in the same way. Be kind to one another. Take care everyone, and I hope you find yourselves a good table.